Welcome. It is so lovely to have everybody with us for the first webinar for Strawberry Seed for 2025. Today we're going to be talking about AI in the workplace. I'm joined by the lovely Imelda Lee, our Senior HR Advisor, who's also probably our guru on AI in our workplace. She's the one that's kind of really embraced it the most. So I've asked her to come along and do a little bit of the session today and also be around for questions at the end, because I think she's probably more knowledgeable than me on this topic in a lot of ways. So before we get going, here we go. I would like to introduce our lovely team here at Strawberry Seed. So for anybody that hasn't joined us on one of these sessions before, Strawberry Seed Consulting are a HR and recruitment consulting firm. We're boutique. We work with clients right around the country. We have clients in every single state, and we predominantly work with small business. So our focus around what we do, particularly in these webinars, is around small business and what small business needs to know. This is my gorgeous team. Since we don't have a photo yet of Tanya, who joined our team last week. She's our newest Senior HR Advisor, and she's joined us with a wealth of experience. So keep an eye on the socials and your emails to learn more about Tanya in the next few weeks. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we're meeting today and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples that are joining us today. So what is AI? Now, before I kind of jump in, I was just looking through everyone's questions that came through with the registration, and I want to just really clear about what we're going to chat about today, because whilst we're going to kind of give you a little bit of context, we are not AI experts that understand the technology to the nth degree and how it actually works down to the nitty-gritty or anything like that. Today is about talking about what business owners and people managers should be thinking about in regards to AI. So it's really the HR view of it. And we really want to get into the things that you should be thinking about and that you should know and maybe implement to ensure that you have a lot of safeguards in place. And that certainly was a question that came up quite a few times in the survey with registration, is people were concerned about security and confidentiality and things like that. And we were just chatting before we started, and we've both decided that just before we get to questions at the end, we might just both take a minute or two for those that are very new to AI to explain how we both use it ourselves, both in our professional and personal lives. I think we worked out today that it's been about 2 years since someone mentioned AI, more specifically ChatGPT, to me at a surf club, standing outside with a drink in my hand, looking at the ocean, and I thought that's really interesting, and I had a bit of a look at it, and then slowly we started as a team kind of realizing it's a pretty useful tool for us in a lot of ways. So that's our kind of introduction into it, and since then Imelda's just run with it, and she's quite passionate about it, which is great. So I just wanted to set that up from the beginning, because some people I think did want a little bit more technical information maybe about it. And we might mention some things today, but that's not the purpose of today at all. But I am going to start by talking about what is AI, because I think, there are some people that have maybe heard the term, they might have thought about it, but they don't really know. Now, the thing about AI is that a lot of people are a little scared of it. And I think a lot of that comes from the films we grew up watching, because I don't know about you, but I grew up watching some scary films about computers taking over the world. The first one that came to mind for me was Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And, that was made in 1968, and that's a pretty scary computer that takes over his life. Maybe if you're more my vintage, you might be very familiar with the Terminator movies, which came out in 1984 and 1991, where we all saw what the world could look like if the robots and the AI take over the world. If you're a little bit younger than me, it might have been iRobot with Will Smith that introduced you to the idea of robots going rogue when it comes to AI, and that came out in 2004. But then if you're a little bit younger than that, maybe you're not scared of AI at all, and maybe the reason is because you are a child of WALL-E, and WALL-E came out in 2008, and he kind of showed us that, robots can have a heart and be sweet and all of those sort of things. But I think there is a lot of myths and things out there around that, which we'll talk about in a moment. So AI, it's referring to systems and tools that perform tasks that have generally in the past required some human intelligence. So we're talking about problem solving, data analysis, actually looking at insights into information, certainly a lot of automation. Automation's a big part of AI, and even some assistance with decision making. So the sort of things that, thing that people might be using it for is to analyze data quickly, to look for trends or patterns. I certainly saw a great example. I did a series of talks across regional Victoria last year and talking about what I'm talking about today. And the person before me was actually discussing Copilot from Microsoft. And, there's some great there's a part of that that can, you can ask it to analyze data within a spreadsheet for you and come up with, actually suggest what trends it can see. AI can automate a lot of administrative tasks, and tools such as ChatGPT, which we will reference a lot today because it's a tool that we use quite a lot. They're fantastic for brainstorming ideas, drafting things for you, improving productivity. But they're really a tool for you to work with. They're an assistant. They're not supposed to be replacing humans in the majority of cases. So I asked ChatGPT, what are the fears and concerns that employees and employers have? And these were the top 5 for both of those. So what was really interesting is the top one for both is job loss and displacement. I think job loss is something that people are quite afraid of when it comes to AI, and it's a legitimate concern. And I think, you need to be aware of what the concerns are. Maybe yours match up with some of these. Maybe you're right across it, but your employees are a bit scared, or maybe you're a bit scared, but your, employees are all over it. So, it's important to know what people are scared of so you could address those fears and concerns if you are using it in your organisation. Cost, is one that can definitely come into play for employers. I think both have security and data concerns about how it actually works and what it does with our information. I think everyone's a bit scared of not having the right technical abilities to use it. And there are definitely some ethical and legal obligations that come along with having AI. So I personally think there's a lot of similarities between the concerns. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some myth busting. So I'm going to hand over to Imelda, who is going to bust a few of the most common myths about AI.
Thank you so much. One of the big things we tend to hear a lot is that people feel that AI is going to take their jobs. And look, I think we've all been to the super. This is one of the examples that I like to use. We've all been to the supermarket using the self-serve checkout. Everything's going smoothly, and then you get that unexpected item in the bagging area. And essentially, you need to call a human for help to resolve the issue. And I think that highlights a key truth about AI in the workplace. So whilst it can streamline processes and improve efficiency, it's not perfect. Just like a self-serve checkout, it can't handle every scenario. And when we use AI in business, it still needs that human oversight. So that's one myth that we can pretty much put to rest. In terms of security, and from the questions that we've received, Carly just mentioned earlier, yeah, it's a really it's a big concern and a legitimate concern. We did mention that we would reference ChatGPT quite a bit. I think the best way I can explain it is that ChatGPT uses pre-existing knowledge. So it's trained on publicly available data up until October 2023. So if I put that in a HR context, and if I'm asking it about, say, something in relation to legislation, the information that it's going to give to me is only up until October 2023. So well, most of us know about the right to disconnect policy that's come into play recently. That's probably not going to give me that kind of information if I was trying to put together some policies. So it doesn't store or retain the specifics of what you've typed in after the session ends. So there's no active learning. ChatGPT doesn't learn to improve from your specific inputs. It's a static model designed to provide responses based on patterns in its pre-existing training data. Some people like to use the term, it's like talking to a calculator. You give it numbers to solve a problem and it gives you an answer, but it doesn't remember those numbers after you've used it. Another thing that I'd like to note is that a lot of our clients do work in healthcare, and they're using tools like Heidi and Patient Notes. And if you're not necessarily working in the healthcare industry, it's actually really common as a patient. I know that I visited my GP last week and she asked for my permission to use Heidi Note Taker in our session, which obviously I'm quite open to AI, so I was very comfortable with her doing so. Now, those tools are typically designed to comply with healthcare privacy regulations to ensure that patient data is safeguarded. So I'm very confident in saying tools like Heidi and Patient Notes are very secure. With OpenAI, and again, the likes of ChatGPT, some people might use Claude, that's another one that's quite popular at the moment. Those AI tools, whilst useful for general support, my research tells me that the free versions are probably not suitable for sharing personable or identifiable information. When used responsibly though, absolutely brilliant at assisting in admin tasks, drafting emails, generating responses, brainstorming ideas. I personally use it just to lay a foundation for me to go from, and then use my own knowledge and expertise just to edit the data that it provides to me. So I think bottom line there is that it's up to business owners to ensure that the platforms that you are using are secure. Another common one that we come across is bias, and I don't think there is anyone more biased than a human. So AI systems like ChatGPT, absolutely not free of bias, that's for sure. But from what I have researched, it is committed to minimizing it as best it can. And the user is the one that plays a critical role there to make sure that you're evaluating the outputs. So there's a few myths, hopefully busted.
Oh, we forgot the last one.
Oh, oh, too complex for the average person. Oh my goodness. And look, I am a little bit reserved with some new systems and technology that are brought into the HR space, especially. I know that some of the systems that Carly has introduced for us to try, I've been a little bit resistant to, but honestly, I don't think anything for me personally, and I think for most, if you tap into AI, there is a plethora of information that you can find on YouTube and Instagram to help guide you through. I think AI, and look, I use ChatGPT quite a lot, and most recently I use Claude as well. And it all comes down to being really good at prompts. It's what you put in, which gives you the best output. So I think definitely not too complex for the average person. Look, we can all use a self-serve checkout now. If I go back to the supermarket reference, some people still prefer to go through a person, but for the most part, I think the majority of us are quite comfortable using that. And, you know, similar circumstances when using AI in the workplace.
Melda, I think it's important to note too, like the take up of this technology has been the fastest in history. Humans are generally, they're getting faster and faster over the years of taking up technology, but the number of people, the speed that this went to, like billions of people using it overnight, was pretty phenomenal. And in fact, we've got a note taker running in the background here for this session for us as well. And we've been doing that in a number of our meetings. We've tried a couple of different tools. We're still experimenting with the one we like the most, and new ones are coming out all the time. But, it tells our clients or our, people we're meeting with that we're using it. And what it does is it allows us to have a conversation without having to be so worried about taking the notes, because we can go back later and it's actually taken the notes for us. And that's been really handy as well. And we've also looked at a number of alternatives to ChatGPT. We just keep coming back to it because, we haven't found the other versions in terms of cost and productivity, are there yet, but, it's an ever-changing industry. So a little bit of research, bit of data. The good thing about data and research on AI is it's all really recent because it's such a new thing. So there was a Fusion Digital survey that was done in December of 2023, and it found that 86% of white-collar workers in Australia are using AI. A typical Australian office worker spends 4.6 hours a week using AI tools. 4 in 10 Australian white-collar workers actually trust AI. 2/3, about 66%, believe that AI makes their jobs easier, and 75% believe that using AI saves them at least some time. And I would agree with all of those things. Here's what really I found quite interesting from this survey. So 21% of Australian white collar workers admit to using the AI tools secretly at work. And this is what I really want to get home to people today. The horse has bolted. If you do not think that your employees are using AI, unless you have one employee who you sit next to all day, every day and see exactly what they're doing, I can guarantee you somebody, at least in your work, is using AI, even if you're not. 63% are transparent about their AI use, so that, you know, that they let you know that they're doing it. But this is what I found really interesting. 83% of employees in large enterprises, so those over 5,000 people, don't hide their use from their employers. And I believe this is because a lot of the large organizations are usually ahead of the game with technology. They might have actually introduced it themselves, compared with 57% at a small business level. So almost half the people surveyed who work in what's considered a small business are not disclosing to their employer that they're using AI. And, you know, there's different levels and different forms of AI. I mean, it's one thing to have AI taking notes for you. Like, I've had Grammarly for years on my computer to help me. You know, I always refer to it as my spell check on crack. But even it's now got a whole different AI component to it. It used to just be like a souped up version of spell check in Word, but now it actually makes a lot more suggestions on how to reword things. You can ask it to write something for you. So I think most of us have probably noticed that almost everything we use nowadays that's technology related is popping up with its little AI version in there for us. But, you know, I think we need to be very aware that the risk involved in not knowing that your employees are using it and not understanding how they're using it is far greater than them using it. Because we're already playing catch up. If you don't know whether they're using it, ask. And if you're not sure how they're using it, ask. And, you know, because you need to know, are they using the free version, say, for example, of ChatGPT? That might be, what are they using it for? Are they using it just to help them draft an email here and there? Then that's probably fine. But are they copying and pasting in, you know, confidential proprietary code in there to have it analyze it? And they're not using the paid version? That's potentially a risk, and also you haven't assessed the security measures of that particular tool. So that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to do today, because I think those figures alone, they don't surprise me, but I really do think that they should scare you if you haven't used it. And certainly when I ran the sessions in regional Victoria, I asked people to put up their hand who's using it or who knows what it is. And most people put up their hand that at least heard of it. And then I asked, well, who's actually using it? And maybe half the people in the room put up their hand. And then I asked, and it was all business owners, and I said, you know, now I want you to raise your hand if you don't know whether your employees are using it a lot. And a lot of hands went up, and, you know, that's not surprising to us. So several research surveys have shown that white collar Australian workers focus time on the very tasks that AI could be doing for them. And, you know, the thing to think about is if you've got tasks that, you know, take up time that are not necessarily high value tasks but have to happen, that takes away time that you could be innovative, creative, doing professional development, doing things that are proactive in the business. So the bright side of the research is that those people that are trained to how to use AI properly are 3 times more likely to report that it's actually improving their productivity day to day. So Slack, I know a lot of people, a lot of our clients use Slack. We use Slack as a tool in our business. So this was a survey that they did across the world in January to March 2024. And roughly half of Australian desk workers in this particular survey expressed enthusiasm for incorporating AI into their daily tasks. You know, I think while there is some concerns out there, it's word of mouth. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is because people talk to their friends who are going, oh my God, like I've found a tool that can help me draft an email. And you know what? Not everybody's great at drafting an email. Not everybody knows how to put those words together. But, you know, having a platform that maybe you can go into and just in plain English ask it what you want to draft, it gives you something, as Imelda mentioned, to start with. You're not starting with a blank piece of paper. So Australian desk workers are excited about AI, but they don't trust it to take over everything. And I'm very happy to hear that. So only 5% completely trust AI to handle their work tasks. And that's actually lower than the global average of 7%. And that doesn't surprise me because Australians tend to be pretty skeptical when it comes to just about everything. And only 13% of desk workers strongly agree that they have the education and training to use it effectively. Most people are self-training. And I'll, it's one of those things that you can't go out and do a course on. You're not going to go to university and learn how to use AI because pretty much what you've learned is almost obsolete, probably by the time you get to the next semester. It's one of those, we're now in an age where we have all this access to information. In fact, a lot of these platforms can train us. You can ask it to give you tutorials on it. You can ask it to explain to you how it works. There's so many great, as Imelda mentioned, like people out there who are, really using this and are sharing their knowledge with others. So it's kind of become, something that you may want to think about giving people the time at work, or like I have, I sort of say to Imelda, you take all the time you need to learn it. And then I get her to share with our team as a sort of champion of AI in our workplace, the things that she's learned that have made her life easier because she's got the passion and enthusiasm to do that. But then she gets to share that knowledge with the rest of the team. So in Australia, desk workers at companies that have established permissions for AI use, I'm going to talk about permissions a bit, are 5 times more likely to have experimented with AI tools. And those that are trained in AI are 3 times more likely to report that it is improving their productivity. And desk workers, it's all that trust, because desk workers or anyone that is trained to use AI are 7 times more likely to trust the tools. And I just thought this was an interesting quote, that Australia has the highest adoption rate amongst its global counterparts, yet is among the lowest levels of trust in terms of the generated outputs. In order to achieve the potential benefits, we need to suggest leaders invest in training to achieve better productivity and grow that trust. What's interesting to me in some of the research, which I didn't include, is that the 2 generations, when you sort of break it down to your boomers, your Gen X and your Gen Y, and that have the least amount of trust for AI are the boomers and the Gen Zs. It's either end of the spectrum. We have 2 Gen Zs in our office, and one of them loves it and embraces it and uses it all the time as a great tool. And I have another one who's scared of it and doesn't want to use it, and she's probably the one that needs to use it the most. I think it's part of your role, if you are implementing it into your workplace, even if you're, for those employees that aren't using it, you need to make sure you're addressing those concerns and things to make sure they are comfortable. So now we're going to talk about introducing it into the workplace. We're not talking about how to actually introduce the technology, which ones you should choose, but we are going to talk about the ways that businesses are using it. So Australia, in Australia, this is sort of based on what's happening in Australia. A lot of companies are increasingly leveraging AI in a lot of different ways, both for enhancing productivity, but also improving decision making by, being able to analyze data in a different way, and also streamlining operations. So some of the examples that I thought I might share today. Imelda certainly mentioned one, which was the note taking, and particularly if you're someone who meets with a lot of people, and some of the systems we do work with a lot of allied health, there are some really good systems out there. Recruitment and talent management is another area that's using it. It's using it to write job ads, to analyze information, of candidates that come in. But this is also an area where that idea of bias can be a problem, because there was a very large IT company in the US who was using an AI tool that they had built to scan applicants for jobs. And so what they used as the basis for that data to input into the system for them to use to compare against was they put in all the successful candidates that they had had in their company over quite some period of time. But what they didn't think about was the bias that actually caused, because they had always been a very male-dominated industry. They had a lot of the people went to sort of similar universities and things like that. So when that was the data that the AI was using to compare candidates to, it was actually excluding people that weren't the same as the majority of their employees. So they found they were it had actually built bias into that system. And I guess that's what Imelda touched on, that, it's about what you put into it is what you get out of it. And you need to have the ability to critically look at what's coming out to ensure that it isn't biased. And, you know, make sure the testing is done. And I think most systems are trying to avoid that, and particularly in that space of recruitment and talent management. But they're the kind of things you want to be careful of. Scheduling and productivity monitoring, you know, there's AI out there that can monitor for, you know, people who are on the road and travel as part of their work. There's now AI tools and apps and things that can actually monitor you know, how much travel they're doing, how many kilometers they're doing, you know, automatically schedule meetings and things for them. Customer service and support, I think we've all spoken to a chatbot by this stage, and sometimes they're great chatbots and sometimes they're not. But, you know, there are, you know, it is actually quite possible to build your first level of support to be a chatbot that knows the answers to all the frequently asked questions. And then, you know, if they're not able to answer your simple question, it gets escalated to a human that can then go into something more complex. Health, well-being and safety, you know, there's safety things that can be monitored from a safety perspective. There's lots of sort of new innovations and new technology that's coming out. Planning, decision making and data analysis and automation of tasks. I mean, these are kind of the main areas I think organizations are looking at to use AI. And look, I think you know, to be completely honest, there are going to be some jobs that will get replaced, but jobs have been replaced since the start of the industrial age. I don't know many people who are professional photo developers anymore, because we moved away from film into going into digital. Now, there are still people who are specialized in that and have got a niche in that because it's something that's a lost skill now. But, you know, there are, on a manufacturing line, there are things being done by robots that used to get done by humans, but that is just part of technology actually evolving. And AI is going to be no different. There'll be, you know, changes that will mean people don't go into those type of roles as much because there's less people required. But in other areas, people are always going to be part of the deal. From an employee standpoint, you know, so I guess they are the type of systems that employers might implement into a business and choose to do so. Now I want to talk about the sort of tools that employees might have introduced themselves. It can be known as shadow AI. That is when people are using AI, but their employees don't know they're using AI. There's actually a term for it. And it's about, they are probably trying to use them to enhance their performance and kind of, you know, add to the systems already in place within your business. So things like writing assistants with Grammarly or ChatGPT, and I use both of those. It's quite common for me to, you know, type in and ask it to kind of draft something for me, particularly when I'm writing things for the business. Say, you know, we have new training coming out and I kind of write, you know, you can actually copy and paste in a whole heap of information that you already have and ask it to summarize it, for example. And then you can ask it to do dot points, or you can ask it to do paragraphs. Last year for one of my webinars, we had a really detailed fact sheet that we have to use with our clients that I wanted to use as kind of the basis and structure of the webinar I was going to do, but go into a lot more detail. And I copy and pasted that into ChatGPT and asked it to set it up as PowerPoint slides for me. And it basically took what I put in there and chopped them up into a starting point on PowerPoint slides. So task automation, Zapier is a product I have used that in the past, not for a while. I tend to choose software that works with other software I already have. But Zapier can help two different pieces of software talk to each other and pull information from each other. Research and problem solving. It can be really handy to do a bit of research with ChatGPT, to ask it for some ideas and its thoughts, or to, you know, for some suggestions on how to solve a particular problem. Time management and organization, learning and upskilling. Again, you know, you can ask it to provide you a step-by-step guide on how to do something. Content creation is a big one. Certainly it's a great way to, you can ask it to help you write, you know, give you a start to write a blog post. You can help it to help you write a social media post if you're not sure, or you can take what you've written and put it in and say, hey, this is a social media post I've written on X. Can you give me suggestions to improve it? So it's like having someone who can be an editor and a copywriter at the same time. Communication, so voice to text is a big one. Imelda's been telling me about there's a new bit she's found out about recently when you can go for a walk and you can talk to your AI as you're going and get it to do stuff, which she might tell us a bit about at the end. And for technical troubleshooting, I guess the big difference for me, and I think for those that haven't used it to understand, is when you go to Google and ask it a question, it will bring in all the different, say, articles or websites that might have that answer, and then it tries to prioritize them. What a product, say, like ChatGPT does, is it kind of looks at all of the stuff it's actually got out there, added into its system, and tries to put it all together and kind of summarize it into, and uses the information to verify itself and then put together what it thinks the answer is. So there's times when it's really helpful to just get that one answer on something. But it doesn't mean it's actually 100% right. You do have to have the expertise and the ability to go and verify that what you're getting is true. And my brother-in-law works at a very large oil and gas company in WA, and we were chatting about this last year, and he was saying that, you know, he works with a lot of engineers, and some of them like just get a little, you know, some calculations or something, and they're using ChatGPT a lot, particularly the younger ones, but they don't have the they hand it to him. He's like, this is not right. And he goes, but ChatGPT told me it was. But they don't have the critical understanding to kind of look at it and see that it's not right. You still need that critical thinking, your ability, that expertise to actually analyze what you're getting out of it. So, you know, it can't be the be all and end all, but it can be really helpful. So what I would suggest you do is implement what is called a PEP plan. So that's permission, education, and training. So as we mentioned, 37% of, well, this is another stat, that 37% of global desk workers say their company has absolutely no AI policy. So there is no permissions there, because there's nothing saying what they can and can't use, how they can use it, how they should be using it, what the governance is, what the privacy is. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. The next step is education and training. You know, only a small fraction of people like feel like they've got education and training on AI tools. And the more training you get, the more likely people are going to actually use it, but also actually use it well and not waste their time sort of playing around trying to work out how to use it. So we're going to develop a policy. Now, so definitely around permission, a strong policy is going to be really good, and it's going to depend on your industry, the size of your business, what you're doing. But this is not going to be a set and forget policy, because the reality is you'll write this policy and in 6 months' time, there might be something new that's coming out or new things coming out. So you need to be, I guess, quite you know, agile in how you approach this. So first of all, you want to kind of say what the purpose and the scope is. So what tools are actually being used and what are you aiming to achieve by them? So this is not just the tools that you implement, though it's really important. So if you implement, say, a system like Heidi for note taking, you should have a policy that really clearly states why you're using it, how you're using it, and, you know, making sure it's very clear for everybody. And also specifying what areas of the business maybe. So you might say, look, we're using this particular AI in this part of the business, this particular piece of AI, we're happy for it to be used across the whole business. So what are the scope? Are there, you know, you might be really happy for your marketing team to use AI, but you might not be as keen for people in other areas to do it, in, say, in finance or in, you know, coding and development to be using it all the time. So, you know, you need to be really clear about that. You need to consider the ethical principles. So you need to ensure that the tools you are using are designed or selected based on the fact that they minimize bias. You need to ensure, like, try and look at ways that you've got AI that's going to benefit everybody, not just a particular group. But also the other side of it is avoiding over-reliance on AI for decisions that actually do require human judgment, empathy, and creativity. And look, given that we work in HR, this is something that we have seen a bit already. People that are calling us for advice, luckily they're calling us for advice before they just do what they've got out of their AI tool and say, well, AI said this, but AI does not have empathy. It does not often have the context of the expertise and experience of someone that's coming at it going, what it's telling you to do is not necessarily wrong, but it's not taking into all the nuance and context that you know, is relevant to this situation and actually might change the potential outcomes and also the unintended outcomes. Because it's quite common for us to say to a client, you can do that, but if you considered that the unintentional outcomes of that might be X, Y, and Z, and they haven't. So, you know, it is, again, it's a tool. And that's how I want you to think about it. It is a tool in your toolbox to help you, but it's a tool that's no different to a tool like Google that we use all the time. It's just another thing that we can use to make our life easier. So data privacy and security, we've sort of touched on this. So you need to establish the rules in your business for sharing, storing, processing data. You need to ensure it meets privacy laws in Australia, and in particular, any industry specific things. So particularly, as Imelda mentioned, those in medical fields, there are going to be specific guidelines. And in those circumstances, I would be only allowing your employees to use tools that are actually compliant with, you know, the right regulations, and not just whatever note-taking, you know, thing they've found on the internet. That people are only using data that is necessary for its intended purpose, and to protect personal information by anonymizing or encrypting sensitive data. As we mentioned, there are free versions of a lot of these. They don't have the same security as the paid versions. So it's important that your employees, that's part of the education. It's them understanding that, you know, they need to. So if you are happy for people to use AI, then let's get the paid version. So we know we've got that security that what we're doing is not going any further. There have been examples of people putting in information and it kind of getting sucked up at some point into AI in different circumstances. It's not very common. They're continually changing and looking at the privacy and security. But Copilot's a really great example of that. If you have the paid version of Copilot with Microsoft Office, then everything that your organization does within your Microsoft, you know, Office setup, same with Google, if you have a paid version through your Google workspace, is private and kept for you. So, you know, those are some of the considerations you need to take into account, and, you know, think about when you're talking to your employees. So transparency and communication, you need to provide the guidance. You need to be clear on the guidance on how the tools that you're giving to people work and their limitations. You know, when do they need to verify and check, and what, you know, if you're having something take notes for you through a meeting, you can't just upload those notes. You need to read them. You need to verify them. You need to check them. You need to add in some other things that maybe weren't picked up. You can't just assume that what you're getting is right. You do definitely need to be upfront with customers and clients about how you're using it in your organisation. I did see a couple of questions there about disclosure to patients and customers and things like that. That's not necessarily that's more our you know, area of expertise, but to me, it's just an ethical thing. You know, as I said, like the notes tools that we've used, let the person know who's coming into the meeting that it's going to take notes before they come in. It's part of the process of setting it up with your meetings. And every meeting I use it in with external people, I always say to them, by the way, we're using a note-taking tool. This is the purpose behind it. I'm happy to share with you a copy of them afterwards. And I haven't had anyone say no yet, but if they did, I would turn it off. So we also need to clarify who is responsible for monitoring it in our organisation. We can't just put our head in the sand and just think someone else will do it. If you are the owner of that business, guess where the buck stops? Now, it's interesting, through our Strawberry Seed journey with it, there were some things that I was unsure of about what we should put in and how we could put it in, and, you know, given the confidentiality of some of the things we deal with. And so, you know, I have my AI person in Imelda who did some research and came back and was able to kind of alleviate my fears, but also we made sure that, you know, we put some things in place to make sure how we're using it is going to protect both us and our clients. You need to think about compliance and legal and regulatory standards. So again, what is happening in your industry? Stay up to date with it. This is an area you need to stay up to date. If you've got an industry body I would be hammering them to say, what do you guys got for us around AI? Because this is not going to stop. It's not going to go anywhere. You need to address ownership of AI-generated content or data, and review vendor agreements to ensure they meet your standards. that you make agreement when you sign in. How many devices and things do we sign into that we tick the terms and conditions? We've never, ever read them. You're agreeing to that. You're agreeing to their policies on what they do and what they don't do by using it. So you need to make sure you check that. If you are not the person that has the ability to do that, it may, and you're not IT savvy, you don't even want to think about it, it would actually hurt your head. There are organizations out there, there's IT consulting firms and data security consulting firms that can come in and help you with the process. They can help you go through and work out what you're going to use it and how to use it and make sure your privacy and everything's set up. But you need to be proactively doing that. It's not just going to happen on its own. The other things you should include in your policies are the risk management. So how often are you going to evaluate the tools, how they're performing, whether they're complying with what you need, what are the potential for failures? So are you now in a situation where you're using a system with AI that if it's not working, you can't work? Because that would be a problem. And having a process for how new AI technology will be assessed and implemented. So if you go through this process and you decide, okay, we're going to go back to the office and we're going to write an AI policy, we can help you with that if you're one of our clients, by the way. But you're going to put a policy in place that's going to apply to everything people are using now. So part of that policy should be for if you say, here are the current approved systems and processes for AI that we are happy for you to use. What happens when an employee comes to, what's the process for when someone says, oh, I've just discovered this new one that's just been released that meets all of these different boxes and is actually better than the version what we're currently using? What's going to be your process? Now, if you're a small business, it might be as simple, like in my team, it would be one of my team popping something in Slack and saying, hey, you should have a look at this. I believe this could be good for us. I'll have a good look at it. I'll do a bit of research. I'll hand it over to, if I think it looks okay, I'll hand it to Imelda and ask her to do a bit of a deep dive and see what she thinks. Because, I think we're savvy enough to kind of know what we're looking for in our tools. I know, for example, Kelly, who does our recruitment, she loves the note taker, but she's after an AI that can actually do the notes when she's on an actual call for phone screening. Because right now it takes it when you're in a video call, but not if you're on a phone call. So we're waiting for the right technology on that to help her. So, what's your process going to be? And, making sure that employees understand, and as we go into training and support now, what training are you going to provide to ensure people are doing it? And what's the process for employees reporting concerns? But, make sure that your employee, that part of that training is, here's what you're allowed to use. Here's the process on how to ask us to use different things, so that you've got a process in place. And I just want to finish with some AI usage guidelines, because these are just sort of examples of the sort of things that I would include in the guidelines. So it's not, the infinite list, but, we often talk at Strawberry Seed about setting clear expectations and boundaries. This is what this is. It's expectations and boundaries. Boundaries around the use in terms of what you can use and how you can use it and what you can use it for. And then expectations about when you are using it, be clear about the things that are important to you. So it's to assist with tasks and not necessarily replace critical thinking or decision making. You don't just get something out of it and hand it to someone. You have to critically read it. You need to review and verify the outputs. You use it to automate tasks, but don't depend on it when it comes to making final decisions. If it's a complex or a sensitive issue, you need to prioritize the human input into it. Define what information can be shared with AI tools. Are there certain things that you do not want people pasting into an AI tool? Clearly distinguish between AI and human communication. You'll notice on I'll be very honest. I have used AI as part of developing this. It's just something I do now. I use it to help brainstorm with me. I know what I want to talk about. I use it to help brainstorm, and then I refine it down. I don't use everything they give me. I change the wording. Some of it might be similar. Some of it might be really different. Some of it might be exactly the same. But I tend to make sure that I tell people that I've used it so that they understand that. And particularly in email communications, I know that Imelda and myself are pretty good at assessing when an email has been 100% written by ChatGPT. Again, nothing wrong with using it to write your first draft, but if it doesn't sound like you and it sounds like it was written by AI, then that's, you need to start thinking about how you're using it. It can make mistakes. Always double check the important outputs, particularly if they're reports, emails, or calculations. report any issues or inaccuracy to the person in charge. Let them know that there's something that's not right. This is where we, the example Imelda used, we were doing, we often use it just to kind of double check our thinking, or maybe ask it just to kind of verify that we're on the right track. Now, we also verify it with, a few other sources as well. But maybe that might be our first question to that. And then we go and double check that that's correct if we're not sure. Sometimes it's just a thought check. But what's really interesting is the reason we kind of came across the fact that it wasn't up to date in ChatGPT was because we asked a question about, or someone asked it a question around casuals and asked it to sort of summarize something about casuals. And what it spat back wasn't in line with the changes to legislation that came in last year. So that's when we kind of ourselves realized, hey, we need to find out why. And we realized that there are dates that it will tell you that it is sourcing information. So if those changes are recent, they are not going to be in the AI tool. And also report any unintended consequences of using it within your organisation. Matt, I'm just going to ask you to share that example of the misspelling of the word strawberry, and just in terms of people understanding the difference between AI, understanding what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, look, it's one of those ones, like I'm not a very good storyteller, but bottom line is there was a thing going around that ChatGPT was always getting the spelling of strawberry. I think the question that was asked to ChatGPT is how many R's are in the word strawberry, and it would say that there were 2 R's. I think there's 3. This is really testing my knowledge. And so then it'd say count again, and it'd go, there's 2 R's in strawberry. And the reason it's giving you that answer is that it's not taught to count the letters in the words. It's a large language model. So yes, it's really good at spitting out a whole lot of text really fast, but it's not trained to count how many letters are in a word. So I think that kind of gets that point. Another thing that we learned really early on was that it was using American English. So it was using Z's instead of S's. So often for people that are new to using the likes of ChatGPT, they will their output will have Z's instead of S's. That's usually a key thing to me, where I've gone, oh, you've used Chat. You can actually teach it to use Australian English. It's a simple, that kind of goes back on what I said earlier, that you can't teach it to do things. You can teach it within your platform,
your account.
Within your account. It's not going, so what I tell Chat does not go to Carly's chat. So you can actually say to it, I use Australian English in all of my correspondence. Can you please ensure going forward that you replace all Z's with S's? Problem solved.
Yeah. And those of you that haven't used ChatGPT, it actually, because you sign in, like we sign in with our Google sign-ons, and it actually has all our previous searches. We can go back and see them, because it saves that. It's saving what's in our account, in our thing. So that's why you can train it for yourself. Just a few things to think about in terms of skill development and training. So, the end of PET is education and training. These are the skills that you need to be developing in your people, but they're also moving forward. And let's be honest, AI is not going away. So technology is going to become more and more prevalent. So these are the skills we should be developing, but also the skills we're looking for when we are actually hiring someone in, particularly if we're an organization that is uses a lot of technology, because that will also hopefully stop you getting a lot of pushback. So if you're an organization that uses a lot of technology in your business, part of your recruitment process should be to assess whether people are going to be comfortable with that, what they've used, how they've used it. Because if you get someone that you are an organization that are pretty heavy on using AI, and suddenly you bring in someone who's never used it before, that could be quite daunting, and it may be a mismatch. So digital literacy is becoming familiar with how it actually works and its limitations. So what is it capable of doing, how to navigate through it, how it is relevant to your role. For example, teaching people how to write the right prompts. And that's something you learn over time. There's a lot of things that can teach you. And, often the first prompt you put in may not give you exactly what you want. I once asked it to give me some name suggestions. I was brainstorming names. I used to brainstorm all the time. And I was brainstorming names for our new training program, and I asked it, I said it's an Australian leadership training program, and some of its suggestions had mate in it, and you know, if you're down under and things like that. And I said, less colloquial with them, please. And I said, can you review that, but take out some of the colloquial with, I can't even say it, the Australianisms. So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, but you need to teach people that, because if they don't know that, they're going to go, what's it giving me? I asked it to write something in a casual tone once and put the word dude in there. So again, I've asked it not to do that anymore. Critical thinking is going to be the most important tool for everybody skill for everyone moving forward, because we need to be able to critically assess that that information is correct. Now, AI can do something called hallucinating. And for those that haven't heard that term, it basically means they make something up based on a whole heap of things because it cannot find an answer. And it has caught a few people in the legal field because they've asked for a case that, you know, has certain elements in it. Now, great tool to use if you're doing some research. You're like, I found these cases. And you can say, hey, I've already found these cases. Are there any other cases out there that I haven't been aware of? Well, depending, if you don't ask it in the right way, there's been instances where it has kind of shot back a case. It looks like it's written for a case that it's actually all the same as it would be, but it's actually made it up. And if you clicked on the link and went through, it didn't take you anywhere. So a few red-faced lawyers, you know, have found that out. So it's called hallucinating. Again, it's just something that can happen with AI when it's because it's actually trying to find something and it can't. So it can kind of put something together that's similar. They're trying to get it out. You know, it's one of those things that they admit in that space and they work on. But that's why you need the critical thinking to go, I need to double check that this is actually a correct case or this is actually relevant. Just like our example with the information on casuals. You know, I haven't actually heard of that before. That doesn't seem right. I need to double verify it with the Fair Work website or something else. And knowing when and how to apply AI to address challenges. When should you just do it yourself, or when would AI actually save you time? If you're using AI or overusing it in situations you don't need to, it could actually be wasting time, because you can go down that rabbit hole. Data literacy is understanding how it processes the information, how prompts work, how you can write really complex prompts. You can ask it to set up tables. You can ask it to write formulas to calculate something, but that takes time to learn. And so it's about assessing what skills in data literacy different areas of the organization are going to need it for. If they're just using it for writing emails and maybe generating ideas, then they probably don't need as much as if you're going to ask it to be writing formulas. So, you know, you need to know what data to input into it to ensure what you get is accurate and relevant. And I know Imelda follows quite a few people on social media. I do too now, who share really interesting, just little snippets and tips. So if you are interested in using it just even personally, I would highly recommend that you follow some of those. There's also an ethical awareness. So again, you need to ensure that people have that awareness that AI tools and what their outputs are and where they could be biased, and understanding things such as privacy and intellectual property and you know, the transparency of letting people know that you are using AI. Skills around creativity and adaptability, you know, leveraging it to brainstorm, innovate. You know, as I said, I use this quite a lot when I'm just like, I kind of know what I want to say, or I'm writing something and I'm like, well, what could be an alternative name? What's an alternative word I could use for this? What's something else that I could think about? And staying open to new technologies. I mean, people need that skill now. You can't, as much as we'd all like to put our head in the sand. I mean, I know, for example, I drew the line, just before Snapchat and went, no, I'm out. I'll let my oldest daughter just monitor her siblings on that, because I'm like, I cannot have another social media app. But you do need to be aware. And at least understand it. Even if you're not using it yourself, you need to understand it. And, you know, really having good communication skills, you know, maybe you're not good at writing things to people. You know, I saw the other day that someone was using it to come up with some writing for a card for a family member. You know, I've used it to, you know, where I was writing sections for our website and they were slightly different for slightly different industries. I asked it to take what I'd written for one and make these particular type of changes to adjust for it. And, you know, be communicating clearly with others that you're using it, particularly with customers. We need to be continuous learners. That's an important skill because we've got to keep up to date. It might be as simple as if you're using it at work, coming in with tips and hints and to team meetings and things, getting those. Like I have a melder that is really passionate about it and they share what they've learned and what's time and their productivity tips so that others can learn as well. And adapting. Risk management, ensuring people, we've talked about a lot of these, you know, the skill to recognize that it could potentially be an error and use your critical thinking to go and assess it from a human standpoint using your actual expertise, knowing how to troubleshoot problems and escalate concerns, knowing how to collaborate, you know, so it's a collaborator, it complements the human work, it's not replacing it. And balancing the insights that AI gives you with human judgment to make those informed decisions. We have an ability to take in so much more context to a situation. You know, you can use it, you know, the skills to be able to use it to automate, to make your life simpler and quicker and easier, and to streamline workflows when possible. This is, while I'm talking, I'm going to press play on this little video. So when I was doing my talks, I recorded this to show people, and I asked it to write a policy on leave. So can it write me a leave policy, a business in Australia? And it did it. You'll see that it spits out a leave policy at the end. That leave policy is not wrong, but it's pretty generic. You know, it says basically it's regurgitating what's written in the Fair Work Act. If anyone's got questions, please feel free to like pop them in the box because we will answer them all at the end. But, you know, what it does is it provides you pretty much a summary of what's in the Fair Work Act. And you know, it's pretty user-friendly. It's not wrong. But the thing is, it's given you what you've asked for, a leave policy. What it hasn't got is context. It doesn't know what award you're covered. Do you know, the sort of things that, you know, from our perspective as experts in the area, when we're putting together a leave policy, we ask a lot of questions. Do you have a shutdown over Christmas? And then we go and look at what industrial instrument covers you and what you need to actually adjust in your leave policy to ensure you can have that shutdown. How much notice do you want people to give and why? Do you have blackout periods and why? You know, it does what you ask it to do, but if you don't have the ability and the knowledge to ask it those intricacies to get it to do that, then, you know, whether it's HR, whether it's accounting, whether it's legal, whether, you know, there's so many things we can use it for, but there's, you know, it's not going to replace the expertise that you are, you know, get from someone who actually knows what they're doing in a particular area. And I'm not going to go to I'm not going to go to ChatGPT for my medical advice. I might go to it to ask it some. I started a new medication and I asked it to tell me what are the top 10, you know, possible side effects of this medication. But I spoke to my doctor before I got the medication and made sure I had actually good medical advice. So finally, just develop your leaders. You know, it's a lot of similar things that we've already talked about, but I just want to be really sure, you know, whoever your people managers are, whether it's just you alone, whether you have a leadership team of different managers, if you're going to have AI in your business and you're going to implement a policy and you're going to allow people to use it, you need to make sure they understand it. They understand the capabilities and limitations. They understand the ethical uses of when they can and ask someone, because they've got to be the ones that actually reflect with an employee, that check with them and say, hey, you know, did you get this from AI? Yep. Okay. Well, have you read through it? Have you looked at it? Have you, and help them learn why they can't just take something and not read it? You know, why they can't just send an email that's been written without actually maybe changing it to their own voice, or, you know, making sure that it is actually contextually relevant. You know, you need them to be promoting the innovation. If you want other people to be using it, they have to be part of those champions to lead the way, part of the skill development, part of the communication piece. They need to monitor outcomes and performance. You know, they need to be recognizing where it's being used well and sharing that with others on the team, but also recognize when someone's too heavily relying on it and stop trying to use their own expertise. They need to ensure the employee well-being and job satisfaction. So is it actually being a positive thing for if some of your employees? If not, you know, how are you going to deal with that? Manage that uncertainty, and just, it's a cultural thing. Like, we have changed the culture at Strawberry Seed we just see it as a tool. It's a tool in our toolbox. It's no different than any other tool that we use. Is it a tool that's really helped us a lot and save time? Absolutely. But it's not the be all and end all. But, you know, if you're not the only person who's the manager, you need to make sure everybody else is on board with you as well. And if you're a manager and then you have a boss above you, you know, and you're going back to talk to them about this, you know, maybe show them the recording of this afterwards, but you need to make sure that, you know, they are on board as well. So I just wanted to finish with this final thought. That was in a document that Imelda shared with me that Ali K. Miller, who's a bit of a guru in this area, shares a lot of stuff and great social media posts and things. She's got a really great resource about using ChatGPT for professionals, which I found really fantastic. So to read through, and I learned a lot from it. So I'm going to sort of, I might share the link to that in the follow-up email as well. But it's a rough draft, a first try, a brainstorm tool, a foundation, an augmentation, but you need to bring the industry expertise, the execution, the critical thinking, the teamwork and the collaboration and the emotional intelligence. It's not everything. It needs that human input to be relevant. We're going to jump to questions in a minute. Really quickly, we've got a couple of upcoming webinars that we're coming up with in February, March and April. I'm hoping to have a special guest to help us with the one in March. And I had a great suggestion from somebody in their registration for one on staff induction, which I think is a great idea. So we'll add that into the mix as well. We have posted most of our training for the year now on our website. We are launching our new online version of our leadership training. So we've our first in-person ones in Brisbane. We've already had a few people book for that in May. That should say May and not September. I've just realised that I did not look at that. So just ignore that it says September. We've got our new online one, which is actually happening and starting in February, and that literally closes on the 31st of January if you're interested. We've started to put some mental health first aid. The first face-to-face workshop will be in April, but there will be some online coming as well. As I said, go to our training courses section on our website for more information. Here's where you find us and all the different things. We do have recordings of all our previous webinars that we've done over the last few years, as well as this one will end up on YouTube. So there's actually a playlist. You can see all the different topics. Several of the topics people mentioned wanting things on in the future have already been covered. We've done them on performance, managing people's performance, difficult conversations. We've done them on the different types of leave and flexible work and lots of different things. So go and have a look. So just before we jump into questions, we'll just, as I said, we're just going to share a couple for a minute or two how we use it. I use AI pretty much every day. I use it for note taking. I use Grammarly to check what I'm sending out. I use it to brainstorm. I jump in there. I use it to draft emails. I once asked it to write an email to someone in the context of, can you please write, I pasted an email in and said, can you write a response to this email that basically said, this is a you problem in a nice way? And it did. So, you know, I use it to help me kind of with my thoughts and play off against. And, you know, sometimes I'll say, that's great. Can you put that in 3 paragraphs or can you summarize that? I'll also use it if there's a really big complex piece of legislation. I will cut and paste that into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it in plain English for me, which can be really helpful. You can, and, you know, you can use it to ask to write for a particular audience or a particular, you know, context. So I've also used it personally when I was going to Bali last year. I asked it to suggest 10 things for a woman of 50 traveling on her own to do in Ubud, Bali. I've used it to asked it to compare 2 different appliances I was looking at. So you can use it for lots and lots of different things. Imelda, you use it a lot more than me.
Yeah, but very much in the same ways as what you've just mentioned there. I really like it because often I have the ideas and I know what I want to say, and I can
sorry.
briefly I can briefly articulate what I want to say. And so if I key in basically the key ideas that I have into ChatGPT, it then comes back at me with just a little bit extra, and it just helps me to articulate essentially what's in my mind a whole lot better and in an easy to read format. I think it also enhances the email communication that I'm sending to clients, particularly when it's around complex issues and compliance. And I really want to ensure that things are broken down into fine details, because so much of our work is process driven. If you're working through a termination or redundancy, we're guided by what's in the award and what's under the NES. And so I always really want to make it very clear and easy to read what those steps are. And I find that using AI helps me to do that really well.
Thank you. We so far have got no questions. There is a Q&A box if you would like to ask us any specific questions about how we use AI, about AI in general, about implementing it in your workplace. We are more than happy to hang around and answer a few questions. I had a feeling I had just over an hour's worth this time. So it's hard to know sometimes, but it is a topic that can go in so many different directions, and you can really get in depth. But it is here to stay, and certainly we're embracing it, but we're embracing it with, we're jumping in feet first, but with caution. We've got our floaties on. We're making sure that it's going to meet our needs, and I think it'll be a really interesting space on how it can help businesses. Okay, I'm really surprised. I thought we might get quite a few questions on this one. If you have any questions after this, we're going to be sending a copy of this to everybody. So we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone might have offline. If you want to send them through by email. Oh, here we go. Do you have any suggestions on how an admin team in healthcare setting could utilize AI, given much of what they use is patient data? I think that they could definitely use it to draft responses to people, in terms of emails. They could use it to write processes so for example, we've had a few new employees come on board, and we tend to try and do little snippets of videos, not just like on how to use the system, but if you actually record it and then you use a note taker at the same time, it can not just record the video that you've done, but then it can also record all the steps in the process as notes as well. And then you can use that to build a process. So that could be a way an admin team might use it. You might use a note taker with, say, for example, one of your really experienced people on the phones to kind of, using something to take notes, like and record some of her calls to put together some, helpful processes around how to answer the phone and how to answer certain queries and things like that. That's another thing that comes to mind. Imelda, is there other things that you can think of right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in the ways of or patient communication, you could certainly use AI, and as we've mentioned, ChatGPT is my favorite, but you could absolutely use that to enhance your email communication, personalize it more to your business. That's a really good way to make an improvement. Think about how you automate some of your things. If you've got any automated emails that you're sending out. So at the moment, we're looking through all of our email templates. Some of our emails are kind of clunky, and we'll absolutely be using ChatGPT to provide us with some feedback on where we can improve it. So yeah, that's some suggestion.
Yeah, it's going to depend on your business, and but then that's where having the good policy and the clear boundaries are going to be, is like, what are you happy with them putting into it versus what you're not. But ask if you've got someone that struggles maybe to write a response to emails, giving them the ability to paste in an email that they've received from someone and say, can you please draft a response to this email, letting them know X, Y, and Z. That can be, save so much time, because instead of sitting there and stressing about it and overthinking it, and maybe not, they've got something to go, oh, well, I'll just change that a little bit, and that sounds more like me. So I think there's certainly, a lot of options there. I know if you are using other AI software, like for the health industry, I don't know whether they have sort of part of that is like a ChatGPT tool as well. I don't use it. So, but I would also suggest your best bet would be to get the paid version, so that you've got, that it's not going to suck in any information. It's going to keep it within your business account, so that they can have a little bit more flexibility, in terms of it with patient data, that they're not, you feel safe that it's not going anywhere. Good question. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask at this time? Okay, well, we don't have any more. As I said, really happy to answer anything offline. You can email myself or Imelda or email the info at Strawberry Seed. We're going to be sharing, I think a lot more videos. We've got to get back on our TikTok thing this year. I was informed this week by our HR assistant. So I think this is a space we'll be talking about a bit more. But you know what? If you've never used it or you've thought about using it, just dip your toe in. Just start using it. But I would highly recommend you go look for a few YouTube channels, as Imelda mentioned, that can, teach you how to kind of word your prompts to get better responses. Find those people that share hints and tips online in small snippets and small amounts. I once got a prompt, saw a video, and I sent it to myself at work, and it was basically how to get 50 or something blog ideas um, in a table that had these column headings and these headings down the side for small business owners. And I took their sort of formula for that and put it in. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've now got this table of all these ideas. Were they all fantastic ideas? No, not necessarily. But it certainly gave me a couple of good ideas to start with. I used it the other day. We're setting up all of our online training in the software at the moment, and I looked at it and realized it said module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it had pre-work, session, post-work, and I'm like, that is so boring. So I sat there for a while using it. What's another way I could say this, and what's another word for doing this, and and I've yes, and I mean, again, didn't use all of it, but some of it was enough to prompt me to think of a version of that would actually be better and more suited to us. So our pre-work section for the lessons is now called Planting the Seed, because that's right in with our branding, and I like that a lot better than pre-work. So yeah, there's plenty of ways to use it. We really appreciate everyone who's attended today, or those that are watching this later. As always, Strawberry Seed is here to help with all your HR questions and concerns. And, if you do want to talk about, some of your thoughts and concerns about implementing it in your business and putting a policy in place, we can definitely help with that. But I'd like to wish everyone a really great night, and hopefully we will see you on our next webinar. Thank you.